Mike Scott hit the first batter of the game, and that's the funny part. Mike Scott hit Dan Gladden leading off for the Giants. Then Gladden stole second. Then Will Smith moved him to third. So before Mike Scott could get untouchable, he was one productive out away from trailing in the first inning of the game that would clinch Houston's season. Then he stopped giving the Giants chances. By the ninth inning, the Astros were 3 outs from the National League West title. Mike was 3 outs from a no-hitter. And in the other dugout, Roger Craig, the man who helped teach him the split-finger fastball that turned his career from ordinary to terrifying. That's the part that makes this game almost too perfect. The pitch came home to end the race. Today, Mike Scott, September 25th, 1986, Astros 2, Giants 0. A no-hitter, a clincher, and maybe the most Mike Scott game that Mike Scott ever pitched. He didn't just throw a no-hitter. He threw a no-hitter that ended the National League West race. He took the ball against the San Francisco Giants in the Astrodome with Houston 1 win from a division title, and he turned the clincher into a personal myth. 9 innings, 0 hits, 13 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 hit batter on the first pitch of the game, just to make sure everyone's heart rate got involved. And the final out came from Will Clark. He just happened to be a rookie who's about to become one of the faces of the next generation of Giants baseball. That's the story on the surface. The deeper story is better, because the man sitting in the other dugout, Giants manager Roger Craig, was one of the people most responsible for the pitch that changed Mike Scott's life. So this is not just an Astros clincher. This is a story about a pitcher, a pitch, a teacher, a suspicion, a city, and one afternoon where the division race didn't end with a scoreboard watch. It ended with a ground ball to first. Welcome back to Astro 100. I'm documenting one game per player until I reach 100. This is Astro 38. Today's player is Mike Scott. Right here under the microphone, you can see it. The game is September 25th, 1986. San Francisco Giants at Houston Astros. Astros win 2-0. Mike Scott throws the no-hitter, and Houston clinches the National League West. Today's idea is simple. For Mike Scott, everything is in this game. The transformation, the splitter, the fear, the accusations. We'll get into that. The Cy Young case, the Astrodome, the almost World Series season, and the knowledge that Houston had the right ace at the right time and still came up 1 game short of the thing it was chasing. Before we get to the Astrodome, let's place the date, September 25th, 1986. This is late Cold War America. Chernobyl had happened in April. Challenger disaster had happened in January. In September, Top Gun, Stand By Me, The Fly, Aliens, and Karate Kid Part 2 are all floating around the movie landscape. Huey Lewis and the News are still sitting at number 1 on the Hot 100 with Stuck With You. Baseball's entering one of its most dramatic Octobers. The Mets, New York's a monster in the National League East. They're already at 100 wins by the end of this day. Boston leads the AL East. California leads the AL West. Houston leads the NL West. But the goal on this afternoon isn't abstract. The Astros can end the race right here. So this isn't a random Thursday game between 2 teams just playing out the string. For Houston, it's the door. For San Francisco, this is the test. For Mike Scott, this is the moment where the season stops being great and becomes legendary. Houston comes in at 88-64, first place, ready to clinch. This city has had very good Astros teams before. The late 1970s and early 1980s Astros had been real. The 1980 team had pushed to the brink. But 1986 feels different because the pitching is peaking at exactly the right time. 2 days earlier, Jim Deshaies had struck out the first 8 batters he faced and thrown a 2-hit shutout. 1 day earlier, Nolan Ryan had taken a no-hit bid into the 7th inning against these same Giants and allowed just 1 hit and 8 shutout innings. Then Scott gets the ball. It's not a rotation. It's a threat. They gave up 3 hits in 3 games. Think about it. That's ridiculous. The clubhouse temperature isn't relaxed, it's pressurized. Bill Doran later described the emotional build as being like a time bomb. Scott himself said afterward, "I'm numb. I'm tired." That's the key. Houston isn't just happy, they're relieved. This division race has been carried for months, and now Scott has the chance to put it down. San Francisco isn't a dead team. They're 77 and 76 entering the day, and they'll finish over 500. Roger Craig is building something. Will Clark's a rookie. Robbie Thompson's a rookie. Chili Davis is already dangerous. Candy Maldonado has power. Bob Brindley's there. Dan Gladden's at the top of the order. This is a team beginning to turn. And a year later, the Giants do win the NL West. The Astros are managed by Hal Lanier, and this is his first season as Houston manager. He's not slowly building into this. He arrives, and the Astros immediately win the division. Lanier's team is balanced, but the identity is pitching, defense, pressure, and just enough offense. It's not a lineup built to bludgeon people every night. It's a team built to win games like this one. 2 runs, clean defense, let Mike Scott make the other team disappear. The Giants are managed by Roger Craig, and he's our subplot. He's not just the opposing manager. He's one of the great split-finger fastball teachers of the era. Sabre links Craig forever to the pitch, especially through Mike Scott and Jack Morris. Craig himself said he didn't invent it. Bruce Sutter did. Craig just found a way to teach it. And that gives this game irony. The man who helped create this version of Mike Scott is now trapped in the other dugout, while this version of Mike Scott destroys his team. And there's another layer. Suspicion. By 1986, Scott isn't just respected. He's feared, and he's questioned. Hitters think the ball is doing things it shouldn't do. True. The word stuffing follows him around. And the splitter's the official explanation. The conspiracy is the unofficial explanation. Sabre's Mike Scott biography frames it well. The scuffing was never proved conclusively, but the idea itself became part of the weapon. That's the episode's hinge. Mike Scott's pitch didn't just move. It lived inside the hitters' heads. The Giants start Juan Berenger, a hard thrower and legitimate big league arm. He keeps San Francisco in the game for a while. Berenger gives up traffic but just 1 run over 5 innings. The problem is, he's pitching against a man who has turned the afternoon into a locked room. Remember? Way back in the last 3 decades of the 1900s, Houston and San Francisco shared the NL West. These teams saw each other constantly, but this game gives the matchup a clean historical shape. Houston's the current champion of the division. San Francisco is the next contender. Roger Craig helped teach Scott the pitch. Kevin Bass, one of Houston's 1986 All-Stars, will later play with the Giants. And Will Clark's final out is almost symbolic. The rookie face of San Francisco's future, grounding into the glove of Houston's present. Mike Scott is one of the best examples in baseball history of a career that changes shape. He was born in Santa Monica, grew up in Hawthorne, and went to Pepperdine. The Mets drafted him in the 2nd round in 1976. With New York, he had a good arm but not much direction. From 1979 through 1982, he went 14 and 27 with a 4.64 earned run average. Sabre quotes the Mets' view of him at the time as a pitcher with talent who was drifting towards mediocrity. Then the Mets traded him to Houston for Danny Heap. At first, nothing about that trade screamed franchise-altering mistake. Scott was fine in 1983, but he was bad in 1984. His career wasn't dead, but it wasn't moving towards stardom either. Then came the pitch. After the 1984 season, Scott connected with Roger Craig and learned the split-finger fastball. Sabre's Scott bio said he spent about a week in San Diego with Craig. Roughly an hour a day, Scott later said he was amazed by how effective the pitch became when he first used it competitively. That's the turn. Before the splitter, Mike Scott's a talented arm. After the splitter, Mike Scott becomes a problem. In 1985, he wins 18 games. In 1986, he's the best pitcher in the NL. 18 and 10, 2.22 ERA, 306 strikeouts, 5 shutouts, this no-hitter, and the Cy Young Award. The funny thing is, the record undersells him. 18 and 10 is really good. But the real thing is 2.22 ERA and 306 strikeouts in the Astrodome in a division race with everybody terrified of the pitch. That's not just very good. That's apex predator. And this no-hitter becomes the cleanest version of his argument. The Cy Young race is not officially decided on September 25th. But emotionally, a lot of ballots probably got a lot easier. The first pitch of the game is chaos. Scott hits Dan Gladden. And that's funny in retrospect because we remember this game as domination. But the very first thing he does is put the leadoff man on base. Gladden steals second Will Clark moves him over to third. So before the no-hitter becomes poetry, it almost becomes a mess. But Candy Maldonado pops out and Scott escapes. The first inning is the game giving Houston really its only big scare. The bottom of the inning, the Astros threaten immediately. Billy Hatcher gets hit by a pitch, steals second base. Bill Dorn strikes out, and Hatcher gets caught stealing third. Then Denny Walling singles, Glenn Davis singles, and Kevin Bass flies out. So they got 3 hits but no runs. But the game's awake. In the second, Chili Davis walks and steals second. Scott responds with strikeouts of Bob Brenly and Phil Ouellette, then gets Jose Uribe to pop up. That's the Giants' second threat, and really the last time San Francisco feels like it has a real foothold. Houston keeps getting traffic. Jose Cruz walks, Alan Ashby singles, Scott himself reaches base on a fielder's choice, but the Astros don't score, and this is one of the strange tensions of a no-hitter. Boston's clearly seen Behringer better than San Francisco's seen Scott, but the scoreboard still says 0-0. Third inning, Scott starts to settle in. Behringer grounds out, Gladden grounds out, Robbie Thompson strikes out. Bottom third, Houston gets 2 more hits and still doesn't score. Dorn singles, Walling grounds into a double play, Glenn Davis walks, Bass singles, and Cruz strikes out. Still nothing. That's dangerous. When you're wasting base runners in a clinching game, even with the ace on the hill, you start inviting ghosts into the building. Not the ghost runner, that's later. Fourth inning, Scott cuts through the heart of the order. Clark ground out, Maldonado strikeout, Chili Davis ground out. And now the game is beginning to feel like something. Not a no-hitter yet. Not publicly, but you can feel the Giant swings getting worse. You can feel Scott getting cleaner. Bottom 4. Scott singles. Behringer throws a wild pitch. Still, Houston strands him. In the 5th inning, the game breaks. Scott gets friendly looking, Ouellette grounds out, and Uribe flies out. Then Denny Walling leads off the bottom of the 5th. Now, Walling's one of those Astros who makes sense in this game. He's exactly the kind of useful, winning ball player a team like this needs. He gets a pitch from Behringer and drives it out to deep right. Astros lead 1-0. That's the first run. It's also the emotional shift, because now Scott's not protecting a lie. He's protecting a division title. Houston threatens for more. Bass walks, Cruz is intentionally walked, Ashby singles to left. But Bass is thrown out at home. Still, 1 run feels ginormous, because San Francisco has no hits and no answers. In the top of the 6th, Rick Lancelotti pinch hits for Behringer and grounds out. Gladden strikes out, Thompson strikes out. And that's where the no-hitter starts to move from private possibility to public knowledge. Bottom 6, Mark Davis comes in for San Francisco and shuts Houston down. Top 7, Scott gets Will Clark to strike out, Maldonado strikes out, Chili Davis grounds out. And now it's serious. 7 innings, no hits. Clinching game. The Astrodome crowd is fully aware of what's happening. The bottom of the 7th, Houston adds some insurance. Dorn singles, Walling forces him out at second. Then a wild pitch moves Walling up. Glenn Davis is intentionally walked. Bass strikes out. Jose Cruz singles to left. Walling scores. Astros lead 2-0. That second run's really big. Not because Scott looks like he needs it. He really doesn't. But psychologically, 2-0 is different from 1-0. One swing can't tie a game if it's 2-0 unless somebody reaches first. Top of the 8th, Scott strikes out Bob Brenly. Phil Ouellette walks, which breaks the rhythm, but not the no-hitter. Harry Spillman pinch hits and grounds into a force. Then Mike Aldretti pinch hits and flies to center field. 8 innings, no hits. Bottom 8, Scott comes to bat against Scott Geraltz and strikes out. It's almost comic. This pitcher's having one of the great games in franchise history, and at the plate, he's just another guy getting punched out. Now the 9th, Dan Gladden leads off. Remember, he was hit by the first pitch of the game. He's the first base runner and now one of the last obstacles. Scott gets him out. Strikeout. Robbie Thompson comes up. Rookie second baseman. Good young player. Scott strikes him out too. 2 outs. Will Clark. This is the perfect final hitter. A rookie, but not just a rookie. Will Clark is about to become Will Clark. He's going to become a big problem for everybody and one of the signature hitters of his era. But on this day, he's the last man standing between Mike Scott and baseball immortality. Clark grounds to first base. Glenn Davis, who's our next episode of Astros 100, takes it himself. Game over. Astros win 2-0. Mike Scott has thrown a no-hitter. Houston has clinched the National League West. And Scott jumps into the air because sometimes even the most composed athlete in the world gets one moment where the body tells the truth before the mouth can catch up. For Houston, this is one of the greatest regular season moments in franchise history. Not just because they clinched. Teams clinch every year. It's the manner. A 2-0 game, a no-hitter, the ace, the Astrodome, the crowd, the final out, the champagne, the sense that Houston hadn't backed into anything. They walked right in through the front door. For Mike Scott, this game becomes a permanent headline. Scott had a better statistical career than one game. He had a great 1986 NLCS. He wins the Cy Young Award. He won 20 games later, and the Astros retired his number 33 jersey. MLB noticed he finished his Houston career at 110-81 with a 3.30 earned run average and 1,318 strikeouts. But this is the image. Mike Scott, Astrodome, splitter, no-hitter, clinch. For the Giants, it's humiliation with a future attached. They get no hit, and they get to watch another team celebrate. But they're not that far away. Roger Craig's Giants win 83 games in 1986, then win the NL West in 1987. In 1989, they reached the World Series. So the Giants aren't irrelevant here. They're just the next chapter waiting to happen. Mike Scott threw a no-hitter to clinch the division. The post-game mood is champagne and disbelief. Scott's immediate reaction is exhaustion, as much as joy. Astro Daily's archived Houston Post account has him saying he was numb and tired. Honestly, that feels more real than some heroic quote. According to Saber, Craig said he told a coach around the 4th or 5th inning that they were not going to get a hit off Scott. That's the opposing manager. That's the teacher of the pitch. That's the man watching his own lesson come back across the field wearing the other uniform. Years later, Scott remembered that Houston actually wanted Cincinnati to win earlier in the day, so the Astros could clinch on the field rather than by sitting around and watching somebody else lose. His summary of the game was dry. I threw a good game. Yeah, we know. Houston finishes 96-66, wins the National League West by 10 full games, and draws the 108-win Mets in the NLCS. The Giants finished 83-79, third in the division, but clearly moving forward. The Astros then play one of the great losing postseason series ever. For Scott's sake, he beats the Mets twice, a complete game in Game 1, complete game in Game 4. He allows one run across 18 innings in the series. MLB's Astros Hall of Fame page notes he becomes the first player to win NLCS MVP while playing for the losing team. And that's the tragedy. The Astros lose Game 6 in 16 innings. They win that game. Mike Scott was waiting for Game 7. That sentence still haunts Houston fans. Because the Mets were great. The Mets were probably the best team in baseball. But I tell you, they didn't want to see Mike Scott again. And that's the final proof of what he'd become. Not the stats, not the award, not the no-hitter. The fear. Scott remained excellent after 1986, although that season was the peak. He's an all-star again in 1987, nearly throws another no-hitter in 1988. In 89, he wins 20 games and finishes second in Cy Young voting. Then his shoulder starts to go. Saber notes he had a rotator cuff tear by that period and was essentially hanging on by the end of 1989. By 1991, he's done. The Astros retire his number 33 in 1992, alongside Jose Cruz. In retirement, Saber notes he played golf, managed his own investments, helped with high school baseball, and lived in a quiet life away from the constant glare. That feels right for him. Mike Scott's legend is loud, but Mike Scott himself was not. Next time we leave the Astros and go back to the NBA Finals. Warrior 14, Rick Barry. April 18th, 1967. San Francisco Warriors against the Philadelphia 76ers, Game 3 of the Finals. Wilt Chamberlain's on the other side. The 76ers are one of the greatest teams ever assembled, and Rick Barry looks at that entire machine and drops 55 points in a 130-124 Warriors win. Basketball Reference has him at 55 on 22 made field goals and 11 free throws. NBA's own archive frames it as the second best scoring performance in finals history at the time. So next episode isn't subtle. It's Rick Barry deciding the finals, still had room for one-man violence. Mike Scott's no-hitter is the kind of game every franchise wants somewhere in the archive. Not just great, but definitive. A game where the player, the team, the season, and the mythology all point in the same direction. The Astros needed one win. Mike Scott gave them no hits allowed, 13 strikeouts, and a division title. That's Astro 38, Mike Scott, September 25th, 1986. The pitch that ended a race. Thanks for watching.